Hello, I'm Ollie and this is Criminolly, where I talk about crime, pulp, horror, that kind of thing. Today, the 10 best horror novels of the last 10 years. So, two caveats before I start. The first is, this is my opinion only, and I have not read all of the horror novels published in the last 10 years. So if you think I've got it wrong, feel free to disagree with me in the comments. We can have a chat about it there. The second thing is, I've chosen one book from each of the last 10 years, rather than just choosing 10 books from the last decade. Hopefully that makes sense. Right, with that out of the way, let's get going. I'm going to try and get through this in 10 minutes, as I tend to with these top 10 horror book videos. So, from 2023 then, my pick is How to Sell a Haunted House by Grady Hendrix. Just pure entertainment, and it's easy to forget sometimes when horror novels can be, dark and disturbing and bleak, that they can also just be really, really fun. And this is a really fun horror story. So very funny at times, as Grady Hendrix's books often are, but also very, very creepy. It's got a great pace to it and some really good kind of family relationship type stuff as well. So it's got a bit of everything, and it's just a really, really enjoyable book. From 2022, something that also has a bit of everything and is very enjoyable, Mary by Nat Cassidy. So a book that sadly is not available here in the UK. I had to import this copy from the States. A UK publisher really needs to pick this up because it's brilliant. So a really interesting story about a woman who's going through the menopause, who goes back to her hometown and discovers all kinds of creepy stuff going on there. There's some great concepts in this book. There's a lot of kind of conspiracy theory type stuff. And it's just really interesting and gripping, and Mary as the central character is fantastic. Can't recommend it highly enough. Next up we have from 2021, My Heart is a Chainsaw by Stephen Graham Jones. So the first of a trilogy. This is a great slasher book. So one of the things I think is interesting about horror authors is horror authors are so often big fans of the horror genre, and it's interesting to see how they work that into their books. And Stephen Graham Jones does a fantastic job of it in this. So this is the story of Jade, who's a young woman who's obsessed with slasher movies. And you get throughout the book like essays and things like that she's written about her favourite slasher films, which sounds like it might be distracting from the story, but actually works really, really well. And then you've also got a great slasher kind of slash ghost story at the heart of it too. So really, really entertaining, and thoroughly recommended. Next, something very different, and I've tried to mix things up a bit in this list, so you're getting all sorts of different styles of horror. So next, from 2020, we have Ring Shout by Djeli Clarke. So this is a wonderful mashup of kind of pulp sci-fi, pulp horror and politics. So a story about a kind of alternative world where the Ku Klux Klan are literal monsters from another dimension, and it's about kind of a ragtag group of people fighting them. It's just really, really fun. I keep saying a lot of these books are really, really fun, and this is no exception to that, but also really interestingly political. So yeah, a fantastically enjoyable pulpy book, but with a bit of a political core to it as well. Something again very different from 2019, so The Whisper Man by Alex North, which is one of the creepiest books I've read recently. In fact, I'm not sure how I missed it from my 10 creepy books video that I did recently. So this is a story about a kind of supernatural feeling serial killer haunting this town. And in particular, the relationship between a father and his young son, and the young son, kind of hearing hints of this Whisper Man, and you get kind of really, really creepy scenes of the son, like hearing this voice coming through the letterbox and things like that. A fantastically enjoyable and interesting take on the serial killer genre, but yeah, very, very creepy. From 2018, we had to have a Stephen King book on the list. Obviously, that's the law. So my pick from King is The Outsider from 2018, which I thought was a great mix of kind of crime and horror. So it's got a lot of kind of supernatural, otherworldly type stuff in it, but also got this fantastic grisly mystery at the heart of it, and features Holly Gibney, King's kind of newest recurring character, who I find always an absolute delight to read. So yeah, The Outsider is a really, really solid mix of crime and horror. I thought it was fantastic. From 2017, we have a book that was actually originally published in 2014, Fever Dream by Samanta Schweblin. So Schweblin is an Argentinian author, and Fever Dream was originally published in 2014 in Spanish, but the English version only came out in 2017. So I'm using it for my 2017 book. So this is a really weird book about this kind of plague or virus that's sweeping the world, and in particular about a son and his mother who are in hospital with all this kind of weirdness going on around them. It's one of those books that's incredibly kind of dreamlike and also kind of hallucinatory at times, and you feel sometimes like you don't really know what's going on, but it's really, really very, very effective. So yeah, a fantastic short read, a book I enjoyed very much indeed. Next we have from 2016, one of the first books I reviewed on the channel, The Fisherman by John Langan, which is a great mix of kind of like I suppose reflection on male relationships, and also really, really creepy Lovecraftian horror. So about these two guys, both of whom I think are widowers, who go fishing together, and about them coming to terms with their grief, particularly the younger guy, who's kind of the central character in the book, coming to terms with his grief, but learning about this creepy lake, and weird things that go on there. It's a really interesting mix of kind of historical horror as well. So there's a big section that's set in the past, but very, very effective overall. And again, another very, very creepy book. From 2015, we have Headful of Ghost by Paul Tremblay, which I just thought was fantastic. So this is a book that kind of riffs on older horror stories. So a possession novel that weaves in bits of other possession stories, and other kind of horror classics as well, but about a family where one of the daughters seems to be possessed, and they are a family who are really struggling financially, and they decide to get a TV crew in, so to become part of a reality TV show, to help plug some of the gaps in their finances. So it's got a load of stuff going on here, some really interesting commentary on the media, but also just a great horror story that, as I say, also riffs on previous horror stories. So a really interesting and effective book. And then finally, from 2014, Bird Box by Josh Malerman. So this remains the only Josh Malerman book I've read, and I definitely need to correct that, because I thought this was really good. And it's a great example of one of those horror stories where just the concept is so immediately grabbing, that you want to read it, and you probably almost certainly know what the concept of Bird Box is. So the concept is there are these weird creatures that have appeared in the world, and if you see them, you go mad and die. So it's about this woman and her two kids trying to travel to safety, but having to remain blindfolded the whole time. So it's an incredibly disturbing and unsettling concept, and a very, very gripping book, but also just a fantastically moving book about kind of parenthood and things like that. So another very, very effective story. So that is my top 10 horror novels of the last 10 years. As I said at the start, I'm sure other people will have different books they would have put on their top 10, so do let me know what those would have been in the comments. And as always, thanks very much for watching. Hope you're safe and well out there. Hope you're reading good stuff, and I'll speak to you again very soon. Cheerio.